My best friend used my infertility struggles to make a cruel announcement about her own pregnancy. She expected me to attend her gender reveal party, shattered. She had no idea my husband and I were skipping it to board a plane and finally bring our adopted daughter home. This is where the story truly begins, and you won't want to miss what happens. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Where in the world are you all watching from today? Let us know in the comments. The air in the coffee shop was thick with the scent of roasted beans and steamed milk, a comforting aroma that usually felt like a warm hug. But today, it felt suffocating. I stirred my lukewarm chamomile tea, the tiny whirlpool in my cup mirroring the churning in my stomach. I was seated across from Jessica, my best friend of 20 years, along with two other members of our tight-knit group, Sarah and Emily. Just minutes earlier, before the others had arrived, I had done something I rarely did. I had let the mask slip. My husband, Mark, and I had received the news yesterday. Another failed IVF cycle. It was our third. Each failure felt like a death in miniature, a quiet funeral for a dream we had so carefully nurtured. The hormonal crash that followed was a physical manifestation of the emotional freefall, leaving me feeling hollowed out, fragile, and desperately sad. I had texted Jessica this morning, asking if we could talk before our weekly coffee meetup. She agreed, her reply punctuated with a string of heart emojis. When I saw her, I broke. The tears I'd been holding back since the doctor's call finally spilled over. I told her everything: the crushing disappointment, the feeling that my own body was betraying me, the quiet, aching jealousy I felt every time I saw a new baby announcement on social media. I told her how it felt to be a pediatric nurse, spending my days caring for other people's children, only to come home to an empty nursery. She held my hand across the table, her expression a mask of sympathy. "Oh, sweetie," she had murmured, squeezing my fingers. "I am so sorry, it's just not fair." Her sympathy was a balm, and I felt a sliver of the weight lift. That was her role, our role for each other. She was the one I called after my first heartbreak, the one who held my hair back in college after one too many cheap drinks, the one who stood beside me as my maid of honor. I had done the same for her, through her parents, messy divorce, and a career setback that had nearly broken her. We were a constant in each other's lives. Now, with Sarah and Emily having joined us, the conversation had turned to lighter topics. But I was still in that raw, vulnerable space, my confession hanging in the air between me and Jessica. I was trying to piece my composure back together when Jessica cleared her throat, a theatrical sound that drew all eyes to her. She placed a perfectly manicured hand on her flat stomach, a slow, deliberate gesture. A smile, one I had never seen before, smug and radiant, spread across her face. "Well," she began, her voice ringing with performative joy, "since we're on the topic of babies and motherhood." My blood ran cold. I watched, a spectator to my own impending execution, as she looked around the table, her eyes lingering on me for a fraction of a second too long. The look wasn't kind. It was sharp, calculating. "I have some news," she announced, her voice climbing. I wasn't sure when to say anything, but it just feels like the right moment. "I'm pregnant." A beat of stunned silence was followed by squeals of delight from Sarah and Emily. They leaped up, rushing to hug a beaming Jessica, who accepted their congratulations like a queen accepting tribute. I remained frozen in my chair, the chamomile tea feeling like acid in my stomach. The timing wasn't a coincidence. It couldn't be. She had waited. She had listened to me pour out my soul, had absorbed every detail of my private agony, and had used it as a springboard for her own grand reveal. As if that wasn't enough, she added the line that would echo in my mind for days to come. She glanced at me, her smile softening into something that looked like pity but felt like a stiletto heel. "It was a complete surprise, of course," she said to the group, but her words were aimed at me. "I guess some of us are just naturally blessed to be mothers." The word struck me with the force of a physical blow. Naturally blessed. As if my struggle was a personal failing, a sign that I was unnatural, unblessed, unworthy. Sarah and Emily, caught up in the excitement, didn't seem to notice the cruelty of the remark. But I did. It was a perfectly crafted sentence, designed to sound innocuous while planting a knife directly into my most tender wound. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and shameful. I blinked them back furiously, forcing my lips into a smile that felt like cracking glass. I stood up, my legs trembling, and offered her, "Quiet, congratulations, Jess. I'm so happy for you." The words tasted like lies and ash. She pulled me into a one-armed hug, her other hand still protectively on her stomach. "Thanks, Han," she whispered, her breath warm against my ear. "I knew you'd understand." But she didn't know anything. She didn't know the depth of the pain she had just inflicted. And more importantly, she didn't know the secret Mark and I were holding, a fragile, beautiful secret that was about to change our lives forever. As I sat back down and pretended to listen to the excited chatter about due dates and morning sickness, I held on to that secret like a lifeline. In that one sentence, she had turned my deepest pain into her glittering trophy. The drive home was a blur of traffic lights and gray pavement. I operated on autopilot, my mind replaying the scene at the coffee shop on a torturous loop. Jessica's smug smile, the pitying glances from my other friends, her voice, dripping with false sympathy, delivering that final, devastating line. "I guess some of us are just naturally blessed to be mothers." The phrase wasn't just insensitive, it was a verdict. It was a deliberate separation of us from them, with me firmly, painfully in the latter category. When I walked through the front door, Mark was in the living room, sketching at his drafting table. He looked up, his warm brown eyes immediately registering the storm behind my placid expression. He was an architect, a man who understood structure and foundations, and he had become the unshakable foundation of my life. He didn't have to ask what was wrong. He just set his pencil down, stood up, and opened his arms. I collapsed into his embrace, and the dam broke for the second time that day. But these tears weren't the quiet, pleading tears I'd shed with Jessica. These were ragged, angry sobs born of betrayal. I told him everything, my voice muffled against his sweater. I recounted Jessica's announcement, the timing, and the final, cruel remark. Mark listened, his arms tightening around me. He didn't offer platitudes or try to explain away her behavior. He just absorbed my pain, his silence a testament to his shared fury. When I was finished, he gently tilted my chin up. "She had no right," he said, his voice low and firm. "There is no excuse for that, Hannah. None." His validation was the only thing that could have reached me in that moment. We stood there for a long time, the silence of our house a stark contrast to the chaos in my heart. Later, as I was curled up on the sofa, nursing a fresh cup of tea, my phone buzzed. It was Jessica. "OMG, wasn't that amazing? I'm still floating. Sue, I'm thinking of having a gender reveal party in a couple of weeks. You have to help me plan it. I need your eye for detail. Let's make it epic. Party sparkling." I stared at the screen, a fresh wave of nausea washing over me. The cluelessness, the sheer self-absorption was breathtaking. She was either completely oblivious to the wound she had inflicted, or, worse, she knew and simply didn't care. She saw my pain as nothing more than a dramatic backdrop for her own happy news. I showed the text to Mark. He read it, his jaw tightening. "Don't answer that," he said. "Not right now, you don't owe her a response." But another message came through before I could put the phone down. This one was on our group chat with Sarah and Emily. Jessica had already created a poll for potential party themes. Glitter and gold or twinkle twinkle little star? Sparkles vote. Sparkles. The casual frivolity of it all, the emojis and the exclamation points, felt like a mockery. This was my best friend, the person who was supposed to be my fiercest protector. Instead, she had become my tormentor, and she was inviting me to help decorate the arena. I tossed the phone onto the cushion beside me, the screen lighting up with notifications from the group. The weight of it all, the failed treatments, the grief, and now this betrayal, felt unbearable. It felt like the universe was conspiring to remind me of what I couldn't have. I closed my eyes, feeling the familiar tendrils of despair begin to curl around my heart. It would be so easy to let them pull me under, to drown in the injustice of it all. But then I felt Mark's hand on mine. He gently squeezed my fingers, a silent anchor in the storm. His touch reminded me of the truth, the one that Jessica's cruelty had momentarily eclipsed. Our story wasn't over. Our journey to parenthood hadn't ended with that doctor's call. It had just taken a different path. A quiet strength began to push back against the despair. Jessica could have her party, her glitter, her moment in the spotlight. She could celebrate the baby that had come to her with such ease. She could believe that she was the blessed one. But she had forgotten something. In her rush to claim the spotlight, she'd forgotten about the quiet little life we were building in the shadows, a life that was about to step into the sun. I didn't know that our story had a final chapter she hadn't read, a twist she would never see coming. And as I held my husband's hand, I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that our happy ending was just around the corner. The roots of my friendship with Jessica ran deep, twisting through 2 decades of shared history. That was what made the blade of her betrayal cut so profoundly. It wasn't a wound from a stranger. It was a deliberate incision from the one person who knew exactly where to cut to cause the most damage. We met in high school, 2 awkward teenagers navigating the treacherous waters of adolescence. I was the quiet, studious one. She was the vibrant, outspoken one. We balanced each other. I helped her with her calculus homework. She taught me how to apply eyeliner without looking like a raccoon. We dreamed of our futures together, sprawled on her shag carpet, listening to angsty rock bands. We promised we'd be maids of honor at each other's weddings and godmothers to each other's children. And we kept those promises. I stood beside her as she married her high school sweetheart, a marriage that crumbled under the weight of their immaturity 5 years later. I was the one who packed her boxes, who let her cry on my sofa for a month, and who reminded her, day after day, that her worth wasn't tied to a man who didn't appreciate her. She, in turn, had been my rock when my father passed away suddenly during my final year of nursing school. She'd driven 8 hours straight to be with me, handling funeral arrangements with a brisk efficiency I was incapable of, ensuring I ate and slept. She was a force of nature when she was on your side, a loyal, fierce defender. The first subtle shift began about 3 years ago, around the time she started her job as a social media manager. Her life, which had always been vibrant, slowly became a curated performance. Every brunch, every vacation, every minor achievement was documented, filtered, and posted for public consumption. Her self-worth seemed to become inextricably linked to the number of likes and comments she received. Our quiet coffee chats were now interrupted by her need to find the perfect angle for a selfie. The conversation paused so she could craft a witty caption. At first, I chalked it up to her profession. She was building a brand, she'd explained. But the performative nature of her life began to bleed into our friendship. She became more competitive, subtly at first, then more overtly. If I mentioned a promotion Mark got at his architecture firm, she would counter with a story about a major campaign she was leading that was going viral. If I talked about a weekend trip to the mountains, she'd casually bring up the 5-star resort in Mexico she was planning to visit. It was as if she couldn't stand for anyone else to have a moment of happiness without needing to top it. I ignored the red flags, attributing them to her own insecurities. I was her friend, and friends gave each other the benefit of the doubt. The shift became more pronounced when Mark and I started trying for a baby. At first, she was the picture of support, but as months turned into a year, and then 2, her sympathy started to curdle. It began with unsolicited advice. "You just need to relax, Han. You're stressing about it too much. Have you tried this new supplement my yoga instructor swears by? Maybe you should take a break from nursing. All that stress can't be good for your system." Each piece of advice, however well-intentioned it might have seemed on the surface, carried an implicit blame. It was my fault. I was too stressed, not trying the right things, not living the right way. When we finally told her we were starting IVF, her reaction wasn't the unvarnished support I had hoped for. There was a flicker of something else in her eyes, pity maybe, but also a strange sort of fascination, as if my struggle was a dramatic new storyline she could follow. The day of her pregnancy announcement wasn't the first time she had been cruel, I realized in hindsight. It was just the most blatant. I remembered a dinner party a few months ago where another friend had announced her pregnancy. Jessica had hugged her, then turned to me and said, loud enough for others to hear, "Don't worry, Han, your time will come. There's always adoption." She said it brightly, as if it were a simple, easy alternative, completely disregarding the complex emotional and financial journey that adoption entails. At the time, I'd been stung, but I'd let it go. Now, I saw it for what it was, a public acknowledgement of my less-than status, a way to position herself as a compassionate friend while simultaneously highlighting my struggle. Her need to be the center of attention, to have the most dramatic story, the most celebrated life, had finally overshadowed 2 decades of friendship. My pain wasn't my own, it was a prop in her narrative. My deepest vulnerability had become setup. She wasn't the fierce defender I remembered. She was just a woman who saw her best friend's tragedy as the perfect lighting for her own triumphant moment. The Jessica I had known, the one who would have fought dragons for me, was gone. In her place was a stranger with a familiar face, a woman who would wound me for the sake of a good story. While Jessica was busy polling our friends about party themes, Mark and I were living in a parallel universe, one filled with a quiet, sacred anticipation. Our journey to this point hadn't been a sudden, joyful surprise. It had been a deliberate, painstaking marathon of hope and resilience. It was our clever trap, not of malice, but of love, a future we were building for ourselves, hidden from the judging eyes of the world. The decision to pursue international adoption had come after our second failed IVF cycle, nearly 18 months ago. The emotional and physical toll of the treatments was becoming overwhelming. One evening, after another negative test, I found Mark in the room we had designated as the nursery. It was empty, save for a rocking chair and a single, framed print of Winnie the Pooh on the wall. He was just standing in the center of the room, his shoulders slumped. "I can't watch you go through this again, Hannah," he'd said, his voice thick with emotion. "It's breaking you, and it's breaking me to watch it." I thought he was suggesting we give up, but then he took my hands. "Our dream has always been to be parents," he said. "The dream was never about genetics. It was about love. It was about giving a child a home. Maybe our baby is just waiting for us somewhere else." His words opened a window in a room that had felt suffocating. For the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of genuine hope. That night, we began our research. We learned that the path of international adoption was its own kind of crucible, a mountain of paperwork, invasive interviews, psychological evaluations, and endless, soul-crushing waiting. It wasn't a consolation prize, it was a calling for those determined enough to answer it. We chose a small, reputable agency that worked primarily with an orphanage in South Korea. The process was relentless. We compiled financial records, submitted to background checks, and wrote deeply personal essays about our childhoods, our marriage, and our philosophies on parenting. We had a social worker, a kind but firm woman named Mrs. Gable, visit our home multiple times. She inspected every room, interviewed us separately and together, and asked questions so probing they made us re-examine parts of ourselves we hadn't thought about in years. There were times when the bureaucracy felt designed to make us quit. A lost document, a change in international regulations, a delay in a background check, each setback felt like a personal failure. During this period, I told Jessica only that we were exploring our options. Her response had been lukewarm. "Wow, that sounds like a lot of work," she'd said. "Are you sure you're ready for all that?" Her skepticism felt like a splash of cold water, so we decided to stop sharing the details. Our journey became our secret, a sacred space we protected from the outside world. We didn't want opinions or pity, we just wanted to focus on the goal. The turning point came 3 weeks ago. It was a Tuesday morning. I was getting ready for my shift at the hospital, the familiar ache of quiet disappointment a constant companion. My email pinged. The subject line read, "Urgent, update from the Everwood Adoption Agency." My heart hammered against my ribs. I called for Mark, my voice barely a whisper. He rushed into the room, and we stood huddled over my laptop screen, holding our breath as I clicked the message open. The first word I saw was, "Congratulations." The rest of the email was a blur of official language, but the message was clear. A match had been made. We had been approved. We were chosen to be the parents of a 2-year-old girl named Kang Mina. Tears streamed down my face, but these were not the bitter tears of loss. They were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Mark lifted me off the ground in a bear hug, spinning me around the room as we both laughed and cried. We were going to be parents. We were going to have a daughter. The email included a single, slightly blurry photograph. A little girl with bright, curious eyes and a head of messy black hair, clutching a small teddy bear. We stared at her picture for an hour, memorizing every detail of her face. Mina. We decided we would call her Mia. In the midst of our euphoria, we made a crucial decision. We wouldn't tell anyone, not even our closest friends or family, until it was absolutely final, until she was in our arms. The process was still delicate. There were travel documents to arrange, final approvals to be signed. We couldn't bear the thought of a last-minute complication after a public announcement, so we held our perfect, precious secret close. This was our active choice, our strategy. We weren't hiding in shame, we were nesting in private. We were creating a safe, quiet space for our daughter to enter our lives, free from the noise and drama of the outside world, a world that included Jessica's thoughtless cruelty and performative life. Our joy was too profound, too hard-won, to be used as a prop in someone else's social media feed. The days following Jessica's announcement were a strange mix of deep, personal joy and lingering public hurt. The group chat was an incessant buzz of party planning. Jessica, in her element as a social media manager, was orchestrating her gender reveal with the precision of a military campaign. There were spreadsheets for RSVPs, mood boards for decorations, and endless discussions about the perfect reveal mechanism, confetti cannons, colored smoke, a cake with a hidden pink or blue center. Every notification felt like a small jab, a reminder of the world where I was supposed to be playing a supporting role in her story. I felt a growing pressure to respond, to participate in the charade of happy friendship. One evening, Jessica called me directly. "Hannah, where have you been?" she asked, a note of impatience in her voice. "I really need your opinion on the catering. Should we go with mini quiches or a taco bar? I'm leaning taco bar, it's more fun, right?" I took a deep breath, clutching the phone. Mark, who was sitting across from me at the kitchen table, gave me a supportive nod. We were in the middle of our own, far more important, planning session. Spread before us were printouts of flight confirmations, a list of essential items to pack for a toddler, and a book on parenting adopted children. "Jess, I'm not sure I'm the best person to ask right now," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "Oh, don't be silly," she scoffed, completely missing my tone. "You have the best taste, and besides, I need you. This party has to be perfect." It was that word, need, that broke something in me. She didn't need my friendship or my support. She needed my skills, my aesthetic, my validation. I was a resource to be used for her perfect event. "I have to go, Jessica," I said abruptly, unable to continue the conversation. Before she could protest, I ended the call. That night, the full weight of her betrayal crashed over me again. I curled up in bed, the tears finally coming, hot and heavy. It wasn't just the comment anymore. It was the complete erasure of my feelings, of our shared history. Mark held me, letting me talk it all out. "It's like the last 20 years meant nothing," I whispered into the darkness. "Like all my pain is just an inconvenience to her party planning." "Her priorities are broken, Han," Mark said, his voice a soothing rumble. "Not you. What she did is unforgivable. You don't have to pretend it's okay. You don't have to go to that party." "I know," I said, "but what do I say? How do I get out of it without causing a huge fight?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he got up and came back with his laptop. He opened it to the single photo we had of our daughter, Mia. She was wearing a little yellow dress in the picture, her expression serious as she looked just past the camera. "This is what matters," Mark said softly, his finger hovering over her image. "She is our priority, she is our joy, everything else is just noise." Looking at her face, a powerful calm settled over me. Mark was right. The turmoil with Jessica, the hurt, the drama, it all felt so small and insignificant compared to this little girl's face. Our daughter. The thought still sent a thrill through me. We spent the rest of the evening talking about her. We wondered what her laugh would sound like, what her favorite food was, whether she would be shy or outgoing. We read a chapter from our parenting book about helping a child through the transition to a new home and a new language. We were no longer just Hannah and Mark, a couple struggling with infertility. We were parents in waiting, preparing for the most important job of our lives. This was our reveal. Not a public spectacle with confetti and cake, but a quiet, profound unfolding in the sanctuary of our home. We were revealing our new identities to ourselves. We were becoming a family. As we looked at the final travel itinerary from the adoption agency, a detail I had overlooked suddenly jumped out at me. Our flight, the one that would take us to Seoul to finally meet Mia, was scheduled to depart at 10 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. I pulled up the invitation Jessica had sent to the group chat. Her gender reveal party was scheduled for that same Saturday, starting at noon. The collision of the two events felt like a sign from the universe. I would not have to make an excuse. I would not have to lie. On the day Jessica demanded my presence to celebrate her blessed motherhood, I would be thousands of miles in the air, flying toward my own. I look. Ed at Mark, a slow smile spreading across my face for the first time in days. The choice had been made for me. In the final week leading up to what I now thought of as the Saturday, my life was split into two distinct, non-overlapping realities. There was the world of the group chat, a digital space dominated by Jessica's escalating excitement. The theme had been decided: Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. The notifications were a constant stream of her updates. A photo of star-shaped cookies she'd ordered. A poll on whether the confetti in the reveal cannon should be metallic or biodegradable. A frantic message asking if anyone knew a good balloon artist who could create a crescent moon arch. Her direct messages to me became more frequent and more demanding. Hannah, I haven't heard from you. The RSVP deadline was yesterday. I just put you and Mark down for a yes, obviously. I'm putting you in charge of the guest book station. Just something simple and cute. You know what to do. Did you see the dress I bought for the party? Picture attached of a flowing, pale blue maternity dress. Is it too much? I want to look radiant. I responded to each message with polite, non-committal vagueness. The dress is lovely, Jess. Sounds like it's all coming together. We'll see. My detachment seemed to fly completely over her head. In her self-absorbed bubble, my role was fixed. The loyal best friend, the dependable helper, the silent, supportive audience. My own life, my own feelings, were irrelevant to the production she was staging. The other friends in the group, Sarah and Emily, were swept up in her orbit, their own texts to me echoing her excitement. Isn't this amazing? Can you believe Jess is going to be a mom? It felt like they, too, had forgotten the conversation at the coffee shop, or at least, had chosen to file it away as unimportant. Then there was my other world. The real world. This world was quiet, secret, and filled with a depth of emotion that made Jessica's party planning feel like a cheap theatrical production. This was the world of Hannah and Mark preparing to meet their daughter. Our evenings were no longer spent in front of the television, but in the nursery. Mark had assembled a small white crib, his architect's hands tightening each screw with methodical care. I had washed and folded tiny sets of clothes, soft cotton sleepers, little dresses, and a pair of impossibly small sneakers. We didn't know her exact size, so we'd bought a range, imagining her growing into each one. We practiced the few Korean phrases the agency had recommended we learn. Annyeonghaseyo, hello, Gwinchineo, it's okay. And the most important one, Ihama, mom, and Appa, dad. We would say the words to each other in the quiet of our house, the sounds foreign and yet more right than anything we had ever said. One afternoon, a package arrived from the agency. It was our official travel portfolio, containing our flight details, hotel confirmations, and the final legal documents we needed to present. Tucked inside was a new photograph of Mia. This one was clearer. She was outside on a small playground, her hair tied in two little pigtails. She wasn't smiling, but her big, dark eyes were looking directly at the camera with an expression of intense curiosity. This picture became our icon. We propped it up on the kitchen counter, and I found myself talking to it throughout the day. "Hi, sweet girl, we're coming to get you soon. Your room is all ready for you, Mia." The contrast between my two worlds was jarring. In one, I was being asked to celebrate a life that had been created with ease and announced with cruelty. In the other, I was preparing to welcome a life that we had fought for, prayed for, and waited for with every fiber of our beings. Jessica's journey was about a biological event. Ours was about a deliberate, conscious act of family creation. The day before the flight, the reality of it all finally hit me with full force. I was standing in the nursery, holding a small, plush bunny we had bought for Mia. Suddenly, an overwhelming wave of love and fear washed over me. Love for a child I had never met. Fear that I wouldn't be enough, that I wouldn't know how to comfort her, that the transition would be too hard for her. Mark found me there, tears silently streaming down my face. "What if she doesn't like me?" I whispered, voicing my deepest insecurity. He wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "She is going to love you, Hannah," he said with unwavering certainty. "Because you are a mother. You have been her mother for 18 months. You fought for her, you prepared for her, and you have loved her every single day. Biology doesn't make a mother. Love does." His words were the anchor I needed. He was right. I was already a mother. And tomorrow, I was finally going to meet my daughter. My phone buzzed on the dresser. It was a final reminder from the group chat. "Party tomorrow, noon. Can't wait to see you all and share our special news. Sparkling blue." I looked at the message, then at the nursery, at the little crib waiting patiently. There was no conflict anymore. No question of where I needed to be. Jessica's world of glitter and gold felt a million miles away. My world was right here, in this room, filled with a love so profound it left no space for anything else. The morning of the Saturday dawned crisp and clear. The sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, a perfect day for a party, a perfect day for a flight. My phone, which I'd left on the nightstand, began buzzing shortly after 7 a.m. It was the group chat, already alive with pre-party chatter. "Sarah, on my way to pick up the cake. It looks so good." "Emily, balloon arch is a success. Jessica is going to freak out. Starstruck." I ignored them. My focus was singular, my heart a hummingbird in my chest. Mark and I moved through our morning routine with a quiet, focused energy. We did a final check of our suitcases, ensuring Mia's bunny was tucked safely in my carry-on. We made sure the house was in order, ready for our return in 2 weeks as a family of 3. As we were about to leave, Jessica sent a direct message. "Hey, running a little behind schedule lol. Can you get to the house a bit early and help me set up the drink station? You're a lifesaver. Red." I stared at the message, a bubble of hysterical laughter rising in my throat. The sheer, unwavering belief she had in my servitude was almost impressive. She was so convinced of her own importance that the possibility of my having a life or priorities outside of her orbit simply did not exist. Mark took the phone from my hand. "Don't," he said gently. "It's time, let's go." The drive to the airport was surreal. We passed parks where families were playing, streets decorated for a local summer festival, all scenes from a life we were temporarily leaving behind to step into a new one. At the airport, the bustling energy of travelers felt electric. Everyone was heading somewhere, full of purpose. For the first time, we were among them, our purpose the most profound of all. After checking our bags and clearing security, we found our gate, B12. We had 2 hours until boarding. We found a quiet spot by a large window overlooking the tarmac, where planes were taking off and landing in a powerful, rhythmic dance. My phone buzzed again. It was 10:30 a.m. The party was an hour and a half away. "Jessica, Hannah, where are you? I really need your help. People are going to start arriving soon." A follow-up message, a minute later. "Jessica, are you ghosting me? This isn't funny." I looked at Mark. He gave me a small, reassuring smile. "Are you ready?" he asked. I nodded. It was time. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about having the last word or creating drama. It was about closing a door quietly but firmly. It was about choosing peace over toxicity. It was about honoring our daughter and the new life we were about to begin. I opened the group chat. The last message was from Emily, a picture of the finished dessert table. I took a deep breath and began to type. My hands were perfectly steady. I chose my words with the same care Mark used when drafting a blueprint. "I am so sorry to miss the party, Jessica. Something has come up, and we won't be able to make it. Mark and I are on our way to bring our daughter home." I read the message twice. It was simple, factual, and left no room for argument. It was the truth. Before I could second-guess myself, I decided to add one final touch. I scrolled through my camera roll, past the pictures of our house and our dog, to the photo we had been sent of Mia on the playground. Her little face, so full of innocent curiosity, was the perfect punctuation. I attached the photo to the message. Then, I opened another app and took a quick photo of the scene in front of us. Our 2 boarding passes resting on my lap, the gate number B12 clearly visible on the screen behind them, the wing of our plane waiting on the tarmac just outside the window. I attached that photo, too. I hovered my finger over the send button. This was it, the end of a 20-year friendship, the beginning of the rest of my life. I pressed send. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the 3 little dots appeared under Jessica's name. They danced for a few seconds, then disappeared. Then they reappeared. The digital embodiment of speechlessness. My phone started to vibrate uncontrollably. A call from Jessica. I declined it. Another call, declined. A string of frantic messages popped up on my lock screen. "Jessica, what is this?" "Jessica, a joke." "Jessica, Hannah, call me right now." I didn't read them. I didn't need to. I looked at Mark and smiled, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. I felt a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying lift from my shoulders. It was the weight of her expectations, her judgment, her casual cruelty. And now it was gone. The airline agent announced that our flight was boarding. We stood up, gathered our things, and walked toward the jet bridge. I took one final action. I switched my phone to airplane mode. The screen went dark, the connection to that other world severed. I was free. As we stepped onto the plane, I didn't look back. I was flying forward, toward my future, toward my daughter. The flight to Seoul was 14 hours of suspended reality. We were adrift in a sea of clouds, cocooned in the low hum of the engines, somewhere between the life we had left behind and the one we were about to embrace. We didn't talk much. We held hands, watched movies without really seeing them, and looked at Mia's picture on Mark's laptop until we knew every pixel by heart. The drama of Jessica's party, the frantic messages, the severed friendship, it all felt like a story about someone else, a lifetime ago. Our world had shrunk to the space between our 2 seats, and the only thing that mattered was our destination. We landed at Incheon International Airport, feeling groggy, disoriented, and buzzing, with an almost unbearable mix of excitement and nerves. We were met by a representative from the adoption agency, a warm, smiling woman named Ms. Kim, who guided us through the final immigration paperwork with practiced ease. "Your daughter is very excited to meet you," Ms. Kim said as we rode in a car toward the agency's headquarters in the city. "She has been looking at your picture every day. We told her Ihama and Appa are coming." Hearing those words, "your daughter," spoken so matter-of-factly, sent a fresh wave of tears to my eyes. Mark squeezed my hand, his own eyes shining. The agency office was a calm, gentle space, painted in soft pastels and filled with children's artwork. We were led to a private waiting room. "She will be here in just a moment," Ms. Kim said, her smile kind. "Please make yourselves comfortable." The moment she closed the door, the silence in the room was deafening. Every tick of the clock on the wall sounded like a drumbeat. I smoothed my skirt for the 10th time, my hands trembling. Mark paced the small room, running a hand through his already messy hair. We looked at each other, our shared anxiety and hope a tangible thing between us. This was it. The culmination of years of waiting, of heartbreak, of unwavering determination. Then we heard it, the soft pitter-patter of small feet in the hallway, a child's quiet babble. The door opened. A caregiver led a little girl into the room. She was even smaller than I had imagined, with a round face, cheeks flushed a rosy pink, and big, dark, curious eyes that took in everything. Her black hair was tied into two pigtails that bounced as she walked. She was holding the same small teddy bear from her first photo. She was wearing a little red dress. She was real. She was Mia. She stopped just inside the doorway, clutching the caregiver's hand, her gaze shifting from me to Mark and back again. She didn't smile, but her expression was one of deep, solemn consideration. My heart felt like it was going to burst. All the training, all the books we had read, told us to go slow, not to overwhelm her. So I did the only thing I could think of. I sank to my knees on the floor, making myself smaller, less intimidating. Mark did the same beside me. "Annyeonghaseyo, Mia," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. I held out the plush bunny we had carried across the world for her. I didn't push it toward her, I just held it in my open palm. She watched me for a long moment, her dark eyes unblinking. Then, slowly, she let go of the caregiver's hand. She took one hesitant step, then another. She walked right past the bunny and came to a stop directly in front of me. She reached out a tiny hand and gently touched my cheek, her little fingers soft and warm against my skin. And then she spoke, her voice a small, clear bell. "Iyama." The sound shattered me and rebuilt me all at once. The years of pain, the invasive procedures, the crushing disappointments, the cruel words of a friend, it all dissolved in that single, perfect word. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, tears of pure joy streaming down my face. She then turned her solemn gaze to Mark. "Appa." Mark let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "Yes," he whispered. "Appa." She seemed satisfied with our answers. She finally took the bunny from my hand, tucked it under her arm next to her teddy bear, and then did something that sealed the foundation of our new family forever. She leaned forward and climbed into my lap, settling against my chest as if she had been doing it her entire life. I wrapped my arms around her, burying my face in her soft hair, breathing in the simple, sweet scent of her. Mark's arms came around both of us, his hand gently stroking her back. We were a circle. We were whole. Later that evening, in our quiet hotel room, after Mia had finally fallen asleep between us in the big bed, her small body radiating warmth, I picked up my phone for the first time. I turned off airplane mode out of a distant, clinical curiosity. It was flooded with dozens of notifications. Texts from Sarah and Emily asking what happened. Angry, confused, and finally hurtful messages from Jessica. I didn't read any of them. I simply went to Jessica's contact, pressed block, and did the same for the group chat. I didn't need their explanations or their apologies. I didn't need anything from that life anymore. My world was no longer defined by what I lacked. It was defined by the small, sleeping girl beside me. Jessica could have her party, her audience, her fleeting moment of victory. She could believe she was blessed. But I knew the truth. I was the one who was truly blessed. I had my daughter. I had my family. I had everything.